Let's start. A warm welcome to one and all present here. We are in the age era where we are facing a lot of difficulties while sitting at home or while working on an online mode. And even though the pandemic has given you a lot of challenges every day, so keeping all these things and everything in mind, we are holding this webinar, and basically the topic of the webinar is managing distraction. So in this webinar, Dr. Samir will be speaking, and he'll be informing you and he'll be guiding you how to manage distraction. Um, Before we start, we just have to understand the words that are there from Quran. They are basically some duas in illness, and it is Waiza Maritu Fahuwa Yashfin. And when I am ill, it is He who cures me. Basically, we just have to, pray from Almighty that whosoever is in what sort of illness, maybe it's a mental illness or something else, we just have to um, pray. And basically, it's beyond the medication. Everything comes in the category of Almighty. So if you go and see the verses from Gita itself says as Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Santu Niramayaha. May everyone be happy. May everyone be free from illness. Uh, if you, these are the verses from different religious books. And uh, if you go and check it from Bible, the Bible also says the same. For I will restore health to you and heal you of your wounds, say the Lord. So on the responsibility, or that everything is in the hand of Almighty, and basically we need not to worry about it. But then, even due to this pandemic, uncertainties are there in the environment. So people are fluctuating. They are disturbed a lot. They have some sort of mental problem, and they are frightened. So keeping this only in mind, we are keeping the webinar. The agenda of this webinar is to understand how to avoid distractions, how to manage them, how to remain focused, and how to keep our mental health during this pandemic, COVID-19, and thereafter. See what are the problems in real world and what are their solutions. So all the related things which are leading you towards the destruction, and how to manage them, and what are the main objective of what is the main objective of this webinar is to keep you relaxed and to make you understand the process, make you understand the situation. And by the grace of Almighty, we have eminent personality from us and with us. He'll be guiding you for the rest of the other process. Organizer of these events are ZIS for Consulting Services, the Golden Path for Success, MP Educationist Conclave, Agaz Foundation, Agaz Welfare Foundation, and in association with SAIPA, IIE. It's basically an organization from Tamil Nadu, and Ayush Medical Mitra. Just wanted to give you a brief about them, a brief about our introduction of sponsors. This for Consulting Services is basically Government of India GOI registered LLP and a certified authorized partner. If you can see the partnership, certification is also given. We are in this Zist for, they are dealing with the Microsoft products and many more products. So the company provides a platform of learning and globally recognized certifications from the giants like Microsoft, Adobe, Autodesk, EC Council, and IC3, and many more. They are the globally recognized skills, and the certifications that you will get will add value to your CV and resume, in turns add value to your career. So a brief about another sponsor, the Agaz Foundation, Agaz Welfare Foundation, Mumbai. Since 2019, Agaz Welfare Foundation is a registered NGO of Mumbai since 2019. Foundation arranges important talks, webinars, and seminars on education, law, medical, and others. Foundation also works with other small organizations in many social causes like food drive, distribution of scholarships, distribution of books, information and legal book, law books to some NGOs, students and individuals. Foundation is also distributing medicines to the needy and is working on working on it to cover this medical assistance from every angle. A brief about MP Educationist Conclave. MP Educationist Conclave is a group of all educationists working for MP. Basically, it's a group of people who are taking their time out and helping out the students. They are educationists, MP working for the improvement of education level in MP. Our knowledge partners, the first one is SAIPA. SAIPA is basically a Tamil Nadu organization. It's a big organization. It's guiding 15 lakh students throughout through 991 career guidance program, associated with 12 universities as a skill knowledge partner, on-job training partner, and industry partner for 26 BVoc degree courses. SAIPA got approval from 6 central government sectors for skill training. SAIPA got approval from 4 universities in India as admission referral center for external students, private students admissions for arts and science and degree courses. SAIPA has 34 centers of excellence. Each center have diploma, undergraduate and master degree courses. SAIPA has 30 plus job skill training specialization, including UPSC Civil Services, IAS, ISSC, TNPSC, Defense, Police Service, exam trainings, life skills, and value-added courses and trainings. Life skill, value-added courses and trainings associated with 100 plus industries and hospitals, professional bodies for practical training and job placement. It's also offering 5-year Alim education plus UG PG studies with grade 12 skills training specialization. Very brief about Ayush Medical Mitra. Ayush Medical Mitra is a group of doctors and medical professionals from MP working for the improvement of medical level in Madhya Pradesh. So I'm moving towards the introduction of our eminent speaker for the day, Dr. Ahmed Samir. Dr. Ahmed Samir is an IIT. He's working for an IIT. He's an assistant professor of psychology. He's placed in Indian Institute of Technology, IIT Dhanbad. He holds a PhD degree in psychology and is a plethora of experience in his field. So here is Dr. Ahmed Samir in his office, and now I would like to invite Dr. Ahmed Samir for the entire session. Dr. Samir, the floor is yours, and the adventure begins.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and I begin by seeking God Almighty's blessed name and invoking His immense peace and blessings upon His most beloved and the best of creation. And to begin with, Salam Bhai said a lot of good things about me, but I just hope that they would have been true. However, moving along, I'll come to the point straight away. Most people have an idea that
Samir Bhai, sorry to disturb.
So, just to begin with, people have this idea about psychology that what most psychologists, what they do is that they treat patients, that they look after mental patients and use psychotherapy and do all those things. So most of the psychologists do, of course, do that, but not all of them. And from among those who don't do that, I'm like one of them. My area of interest is in understanding mostly how people think, how they remember things, how are they able to focus on whatever they want to learn and all those. It's very different from, talking about things like mental health and psychological disorders and therapy and counseling and all. So when I was approached with this question of, with this proposal of, giving having a talk on mental health, I was a bit confused. But then when I thought about the topics that I was studying, that the things that I was studying about, that they make a very, very strong connection with mental health. And that is what I'm going to demonstrate to you in the beginning. And then we'll continue with the usual things about distraction and how do you deal with them. At the outset, I would like to tell you that I am not an expert in this field, but I have had the good fortune of being connected with people who are probably the best in the field. And thanks to Almighty that I'm going to share my experience that I have had with them and probably pass on some of the knowledge to you, which will be beneficial to you. So, what is mental health? If we were to simply define mental health, it is it includes all of your emotional, psychological, social, and all those aspects that are going on inside your mind. So how you feel, what you think, how you act, all these would constitute mental health if you're doing it in a most optimized way. Now, what is an optimized way? We'll come to that later. But what affects our mental health? One of the factors that does affect our mental health subtly. So this is not something that affects you very badly, or it doesn't make you ill if this happens, but it does make you unhappy. And what is that? It is the difference between the life that we want to live and the life that we are currently living. So in other words, what we are at the moment and what we want to be. If there is a difference in this, then you start experiencing problems of mental health. It could be in forms of subtle anxieties and things like that. So difficulty in concentration, sleeplessness, and all those things, they do arise. And this is a problem that we are often not able to identify. If you see your life, it can be divided into various domains. So we have our relationships, we have our employment, where we seek jobs and all. We have our skill sets and our hobbies. We have our values, and we have spirituality. So we all tend to be a little bit spiritual. Even if we are not religious, we tend to be a little bit of spiritual. That's necessary for everyone. All these are domains of your life, and we have a certain aim for each of these domains. So we want to enjoy good relationship with all our friends and family members. We want to be good in our employment. We want promotions and all those things. Similarly, we want to have certain skill sets, and we want to practice certain values, and we want to be spiritual at the same time. So we have certain goals. If we are not able to achieve those goals, we start experiencing problems. And if the goals that you have in mind for each of these domains, the closer they are to what you want in life. So, for example, if you want to have a certain amount of a certain job, if you like a certain job, that's your ambition, and if you have that job or something similar to that job, you will be happier. But if you are far away from that, you're unlikely. You will likely be experiencing some sort of unhappiness. Okay. So the idea is very simple. Please remember these red and green circles. We'll be using them throughout the presentation. If your perceived life, the life that you want to have, and the life that you are living, if they are very close to each other, then you will experience happiness. But if they are far off, then you will start experiencing unhappiness. You will be unhappy. You will start experiencing some sort of mental health imbalances. So now you may be wondering, what does this have to do with distraction? If I were to ask you simply what is distraction, you will all come up with different definitions. Some of you will say just not focusing on a task. Some of you will say perhaps using a lot of social media, or watching a lot of TV, and all those things. Not doing something with full interest and all those things. You will say that that's what distraction is. In psychology, we define distraction slightly differently. We say that any behavior that takes us closer to what we want in life, or the green circle, is traction. It's called traction. And anything that takes us away from what we want in life, that is, it takes us away from the green circle and closer to the red circle, that is distraction. So any behavior. Now, using social media for 8 to 10 hours a day need not be distraction for everyone. Suppose someone is a social media manager, someone is marketing over social media. For them, that's their work. It's not going to be a distraction. But for someone, watching news can be a distraction. If you're not like if you're trying to escape your doing your homework or something, and you're indulging in watching news, then that's distraction. So something as good as watching news could be distraction, and using social media could still be distraction. It all depends upon the goals of your life, the life that you're trying to achieve. So obviously, the more distracted you are, the more unhappy you're likely to be. And this is where our link between mental health and distraction comes into the fore. But to understand distraction, say more closely, we need to understand a little bit of how attention works. And this is an important point. In fact, it's an important point for all of you are aware that there's now a plethora of people offering counseling services and psychotherapy. The basic underlying principle in most psychotherapies is that all that you need to do for a person to become well using these techniques is that you explain to him how his mind works. Once he understands how his mind works, things start getting better on their own. So therefore, we'll start with a very brief introduction to how attention works, because that's where the starting point for distraction will be. Lack of attention would simply be distraction. Now, lack of attention to what is what we'll focus on this particular talk. So let's see what attention is. Attention can broadly, I'm not going to define it academically, it's a little difficult to capture that way, but let's see the general understanding of attention. You can say attention is of two types. One form of attention involves just selecting a kind of information from your environment, while the other is what you usually refer to as like focusing on something. So for example, if you want to read or you want to study, you want to like watch something with concentration, do something with concentration, so you need to focus on that. Now that is the other form of attention. The first form is that you just select information. So I'll be talking only about the second one here, because that is what distraction is related to, but I'll demonstrate what the first one is in two simple say exercises. So I invite all of you to do this on your own. In the next slide, you're going to see an array of letters. What I want you to do is try to recall. I'll display them for about 5 seconds. Try to remember as many letters as you can. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so how many of you were able to, you can stop, how many of you were able to recall, say, 10? Now you don't have to answer. I mean, that would call it chaos. The thing is, this kind of tasks, which requires you to remember some of these letters, is you're just selecting certain information from the environment. You do not need to focus on this task for a long time. Similarly, a video will demonstrate this in a better way. So now we watch a video, a small video. Please focus on this. This will require you to pay attention.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking there?
So I hope all of you enjoyed that. I mean, no need to be extra concerned if you're not able to spot that pair. Around 90% of the people were not able to do it. And the idea is that this just shows you how naturally attention works. Our attention is such that it's an inborn capacity which is very limited, and we can only focus on certain things at a time. And therefore, if we try to do too much, we are naturally bound to fail. So we are not able to detect something as salient, or as it could be dangerous if it was a real animal, like a bear in this. If you're not able to do that, think about other, harmless things. We might not be able to focus on them at all. The idea is that attention can be perceived as a sort of a bag, if you like, which is empty, and you need to fill it up. So if you're doing a certain task, the attention, this attention space, this bag, we'll call it attentional space, it is filled up with those tasks. But as you can see that it is defined by a boundary. So the bag is of a limited capacity. You can only put so much information that it can hold. If you try to put too much, it'll just lapse out, just as the bear, because you were focusing too much on the passes that were being made by the white players. You did not focus on anything else, whether it be the bear or whether it be how many passes the black team was making. This is what tells you, because your attentional space was completely filled out. So this is what tells you how limited it is. Now, another thing is that sometimes you would have noticed that you're able to do things automatically. Automatically means you don't really have to pay too much attention. So for example, if you're folding your bed sheets, or if you're listening to music, or if you're just, singing while taking a shower or brushing your teeth, you're all able to do multiple things at the same time. So you're able to talk while driving, and a number of things you're able to do. All these are important tasks, but they are so habitual, you're so habituated to them that they're almost mechanical, and therefore they do not consume a lot of attentional space. A good example is when someone is driving, when someone newly learns driving, it's very difficult for them to talk to their passenger at the side, because they have to focus, even how to change the gears, how to press the brakes, and everything requires focus, and their attentional space is generally filled with this task of driving. While for someone who is already used to it, for them it's a very simple task, and they can indulge in at the same time listening to FM and also talking to their passengers. So these are this is the crux of it. Habitual things, they require very little attention space, and that is why you can do it almost automatically without focusing much. However, if the task is complex, for example, you're listening to this task. Now, this is called like a sort of a deep conversation, or deep means you need to really focus on it. Or if you're reading something very complicated, you need to focus your attention on that. If you don't, then you will not get the crux of the task, or you might not even be able to understand anything from the task. It can happen. Even if you try to do it with something habitual, you'll not be able to do it, because that's the nature. So the idea is that attention is limited. Let's call it attentional space. And this limitedness of attention allows you only to do certain tasks at a time. The task should also not be too complicated, but we'll come to all those things a little later. Now, our entire, from now on, our presentation will be just focused on how we are able to manage the attentional space. So we have understood that the attentional space is limited, and therefore to increase our focus, to reduce our distraction, to increase our attention, all we need to do is to manage this space. You can't increase it. It is fixed. You cannot do anything, no matter what you do. If you think that you can practice it, and by practicing multitasking you can increase the space, you can't. It's fixed. All you can do is just manage things better. So how do you go about it? So first of all, your concentration, your ability to concentrate is not a function, is not dependent upon having a large attentional space, but just how well your attentional space is managed. So how well you manage these, for those of you who are coming from a computer science background might know that softwares differ on the way they manage their memory, the random access memory and stuff, and the more efficient softwares are able to better manage the same sort of memory. This is the kind of the same analogy you can draw to this attentional space. The better you're able to manage it, the more concentration you will have, the less distractions that you're going to have. Again, I cannot emphasize this point enough. Attentional space is limited. You cannot increase it. So do not think that by practicing multitasking, no matter what your social media or what your pop psychology tells you, multitasking is unlikely to make your attentional space larger. In fact, it is just going to be overwhelmed. And you should try to keep your attention such that it is not under a lot of strain. Okay. So for managing attentional space, we need to focus on two things. One is called meta-awareness and the other is attentional residue. I'll discuss both of these things in detail, some detail, not a lot of detail, because if you have an idea about these things, you can perhaps design your own tasks or your own activities which can help you expand your attention space. And again, when I say expand your attention space, I do not mean that you're actually going to increase it. What I mean is that you're just going to manage it better. So henceforth, if I say expand your attentional space or increase your attention span, what I simply mean is that you're able to manage it better. All right. So these are the two broad principles. Please remember them. One is meta-awareness and the other is attention residue. What this is, we'll look at it now. First, let's talk about meta-awareness. Meta-awareness is the process of knowing what you're thinking at the moment. So, for example, it's slightly difficult to understand, but I'll try to make it simpler for you. Suppose that I am doing a maths problem. Now, one thing is that I'm fully involved in that maths problem. I see the steps. I'm following the steps. But at the same time, I'm aware that I can solve this problem using, say, another formula or another method. So I am not only involved in doing the task, I have some attentional space left for focusing on what I'm doing. I'll take another example of, say, when most of you would be standing like would be up for prayer. When you're praying, you are reciting something, and at the same time, you sometimes try to understand what that recitation means. So you're focusing on the recitation and also focusing on what that means, and you're also focusing on the step that you are. So perhaps you might be standing, and then you might need to bow, and then you might need to prostrate. So you have to not only remember the content of what you're speaking, you also have to remember these steps. If you are not able to focus, then you're likely to forget what you were doing. This remembering the steps beyond what you're reciting, remembering or focusing or understanding what you're doing is sort of meta-awareness. So for those of you who practice meditation, you see that you're focusing on your breath. Sometimes you're asked to focus on the movement of your muscles. Sometimes you're asked to focus on your thoughts. So while you're meditating, your focus on these thoughts and muscles can only come about if you have meta-awareness, which simply means that even when you're doing a complex task, you have certain space left out in your attentional space so that you could see whether the task that you're doing is going in the right direction or not. And this is going to be very important in designing any task that is going to reduce distraction. So it helps you regulate your the task that you're doing by monitoring, by supervising your thoughts and also your feelings and any other fears that you might have. So this is about meta-awareness. You don't need to bother if you have not been able to understand this technically, because you can still do the tasks that would lead to a higher, a better concentration, even if you don't understand the technicalities of this. The other issue was of managing attentional space was preventing attentional residue. Now, this is very, very important and quite dangerous, and all of us are likely to fall into this. Attentional residue is a simple concept. It comes from management literature, that when you move from one task to another, the thoughts related to the earlier task are carried over to your attentional space. So for example, if I was talking to someone and then I just go back, I was reading, I talked to someone, and then after that, if I want to go back to reading, the talk that I have had with this person, some of that would be carried over to my reading again. And that prevents me from focusing fully or utilizing my attentional space in a better way. And this is called the cost of switching from one task to another. And we pay very heavily about it. According to some estimates, it takes about 10 minutes after you have withdrawn from a task to clear its attention residue. Now, imagine what happens when you are answering a phone during reading, or when you are focusing on something important and you just have to check your mail or you check your WhatsApp or something. Now, whatever you do, even just answering the call or checking your WhatsApp, it might seem very harmless. It might absolutely seem that there's nothing wrong. I just check for a message. But the effect of that is carried over to your whatever you were doing, the task that you wanted to focus on, and it stays for about 10 minutes. We cannot be really sure about this 10 minutes figure, but this is what we generally find in the literature. Similarly, nowadays we have lots of, in fact, most of the classes are online. So we see students simultaneously, they're logged in for the class is going on, and they check their websites, and they check other websites. This again costs heavily on their attention, because even if they try to move back, they will not be able to enjoy the level of attention, or they will not be able to enjoy the kind of attention space that they were having before they were involved in this distraction. Okay, so now increasing concentration is about increasing attentional span, or again optimizing attentional space, which is the same as managing it better. And the basic underlying principles in most of the techniques that we do is that you either increase your meta awareness, you are aware about what you're doing, or both could be combined. It's not that if you have one, you don't have the other. You have less and less of attention residue. So the idea is increase your meta awareness and increase your meta awareness and lower your attention residue. This is the principle underlying. So you can, in other words, say this is the psychology of distraction, what is going on underlying under your mind. You will not see this, but this is what is happening. Okay. Coming back to distraction, we already defined it as anything that takes you away from the goals that you want in life is distraction. So distraction now, as we understand in general terms, is lack of concentration on things that will take us to your desired self. So for example, eating chocolate after dinner rather than fruits, or after lunch rather than fruits, is a kind of distraction. Why? You know that eating fruits is better for your health. It is going to take you towards your desired goal of, say, enjoying a healthy life. But what you choose to do is you eat chocolate. This is also a distraction. This is an example of distraction. Similarly, instead of studying, we start using social media. This is again a kind of distraction. Why? Because studying is going to take you to your desired goal, while social media is not. So the idea is that whenever you want to call something distraction, you cannot just call something distraction because you're spending too much time on it, or that you're spending too much time on the screen. To define anything as a distraction, what you need to do is you need to have your life goals defined. Your life goals will tell you if something is distraction. So anything that is going to take you closer to your life goal is traction. Anything that takes you away from your life goals is distraction. Remember this point. This is going to help you in deciding, in answering the questions of whether you are actually distracted or not. No one can tell you. No one actually can tell you. But for someone who's Googling, searching things on Google or watching YouTube videos, this might be just a waste of time because it's not aligned with their life goals. But for someone, it could be research work. They might actually be looking for something, or it could be a journalist who's looking over, watching over the videos for something. So for them, that distraction. For the other person, it's a distraction. All depends upon your life goals. So take time out for yourself and decide on your life goals and each of your domains of where you want your relationships to be, where you want your skills to be, how you want your employment to be, spirituality, and all others. It's not just limited to what I have mentioned. There are many other domains of our life, and in each domain we have some ambition. So it might be good to maintain a diary about it, a journal, even a digital journal would do, so that you list down what are your targets in life, and then accordingly engage in behaviors that will lead you closer to those. Okay. Now, from the perspective of this presentation, it is important to understand the difference between traction and distraction, because the solutions that I will give, which I will try to provide, are divided into traction and distraction. So traction are those, again, which are related, which are going to take you closer to your goal, and distraction is about avoiding those things which are taking you away from your life goals. So it's going to be divided in that way. So do remember the definition even across right now, but I'll keep repeating it. Okay. Before we move on further to the solutions, let us just quickly look at what are the causes of distraction. There are four main causes, as we have studied in distraction. Two of them are something that is internal to us, something that comes with us when we were born. It's innate. You can't do anything about it. And two of the other things, again, they are internal to us, but we can do something about them. We can deal with them. So the first is limited attention capacity. I've already shown you this. We'll look at the solutions about this. We have limited attention capacity, and we are born with this. You can't do anything about it. It is just kind of, it's written for us. We can't help it. The other problem is that we have this something called the novelty bias. Novelty bias is that we try to seek out new things. New things always seem more interesting, so we tend to jump from one thing to another. Now, we cannot help this again. This is something, it's an inborn trait. If you have noticed your children, that they're very easily distracted from one thing to another. So you just, if they're crying, you show them a toy, they'll quickly start taking interest in that toy, and then if they see the phone, they'll suddenly start taking in that phone. If someone calls out their name, then they'll again start focusing on those things. So anything, a child is very easily distracted. The idea is because they are born with this ability to seek new things. It's again an inborn thing. We can't help it. We have to work with it. So the first two things are something that we have to work with. The third one, which is lack of motivation, is actually very simple to explain but very difficult to address. Is simply that you should have a purpose in what you're doing. If you do not have a purpose, you are most likely to be distracted. The task will be very, very distracting for you. And finally, we have what is called internal discomfort. Internal discomfort is that if I'm feeling emotionally down, or if I have a fear of something, if I have anxiety, if I don't like something, if I'm feeling bored, all these things create a state of internal discomfort, and any state of internal discomfort will take me away from my task to something that is a distraction. You'll understand this point because we'll discuss this in a little more detail when we discuss the solutions. Now, to improve your concentration, then remember this summary. This is all that we have talked about so far, and from now on, we will now be moving to the solutions. So we have our goals to improving our concentration or reducing distraction. We need to increase our meta-awareness, and we need to eliminate or at least reduce to a minimum the attention residue. These are the two things, the underlying psychology that we need to address. There are four hurdles which I have just discussed, and they are the causes. You need to see how we get over the limited attentional capacity, how we deal with our tendency to seek new things, how we deal with our lack of motivation, and how we deal with our internal discomfort. Then we have what are called the action steps. This is the actual drills or the actual exercises or the actual tasks that you will be doing to address your problem of attention and concentration. So it's our solutions will be divided into this. Now remember that underlying things are the two earlier, then we have the four causes, and then finally the action steps. Okay, so all right, then now we move on to the first solution, and that is how do you address the limited attention capacity. We have already shown you demonstrations of how your attention capacity is limited. Filmmakers make use of this all the time. So they change the background, they change the way a scene was contextualized in different frames. It's beneficial for them because we don't remember everything. So you'll often find a lot of changes in the scene. This is because of our limited attention capacity. We are too much focused on the characters to notice anything that is going on in the background. Now, what happens because of our limited attentional space is that it tends to be overloaded if you have too many tasks. So for those of you who are trying to do multitasking, now multitasking is not something good, no matter what anyone tells you. It is the idea is, the basic idea that we have found in psychology is that you actually cannot multitask. Even if they are very automatic, at any given time you can only focus on one thing. So you cannot have you cannot be indulging in multitasking. It's that perhaps you're switching very quickly without a lot of loss of information, but to say that you can focus on two things at the same time, you cannot focus on them. You might just be doing it mechanically. That's possible. So multitasking, please avoid it as far as possible. As far as possible, just avoid it. The other problem is that you could be doing a very complicated task. By complicated task is, I don't mean that an unsolvable task. What I mean is that you do not have enough information to solve that task. So for example, if we are, say, trying to develop a program for something for accounting, but we do not know we do not know how to use that programming language that we are using, this is going to overwhelm your attention because you do not have the required knowledge. Similarly, if you are trying to write an exam, the exam can be overwhelming if you are not prepared. Why? Because you do not have the required information that is required to address the task, and this will overwhelm your attention and most likely force you to quit out of it. And if it's something normal in your life, you will be doing something else than involving yourself in that task. So we have seen children in, say, mathematics class or other classes that they often start drawing things on their books and indulging in making things with their hands and playing around. The reason is because for them the task is too complicated. They have not been able to understand. They've not been able to internalize the information sufficiently for them to attend the task, and therefore it's a problem and they lose their attention. Also, the tasks that require your attention for too long. So it's good to focus, say, for about 30 minutes, 45 minutes. It's good. For one session, that is nice. But beyond that, we start losing your attention, and this will differ from person to person. Someone can focus for 2 hours, for 3 hours straight. There are people who can do that, but generally, like half an hour is a good indicator of even in our class, students might be able to pay attention for about half an hour. They can hold that, but beyond that, it is difficult. So what actually happens inside the mind is that when you are doing a task for too long, we are not able to indulge in what is called diffuse thinking, which is like, if I use the general terms, the creative aspects that you need to solve a problem. One of the things is that you need information to solve the problem, and then you also need your own ideas to use that information to address the problem, which is like creative thinking out of the box. That requires some diffusion, which means that you do not now need to stop taking in information and just rearrange the information that is there in your mind. And if you focus, or if you try to focus on something for too long, then you are not going to be able to use your diffuse thinking. Now, what is the solution? The solution will be to fill your attentional space only with the necessary items. So whatever task you want to indulge in, see what is necessary and only do take up those tasks. And then you leave out some space for thinking about what you're doing. This is, again, as you can understand, it's about meta-awareness. So that's about having set the solution. How do you actually implement it? So now let's look at how we implement the solution. Again, as I said, the solutions will be divided into traction and distraction, and this is what we'll follow for the others. Traction will take you closer to your green circle. Distraction will try to move you away from the red circle. So make sure that the task will not overwhelm your attention space. And overwhelm can happen because of either you're doing too many tasks, or it is too complicated, or you're doing it for too long. So what do? Analyze the complexity of the task. Before undertaking a task, see how difficult it is, see whether you will be able to do it, see what tools you need to solve the problem, and then start taking up the task. Otherwise, you will be distracted later on. It could be as simple as, say, hammering, putting a nail on the wall. Now, if you need to put a nail on the wall, you need to understand that you require a nail, you also need a hammer, you perhaps need some other kind of tools to fix that nail, and perhaps you also need to understand the kind of wall, whether it's very hard, whether the hammer will work or not. If you do this beforehand, then the task, the time that the task will take will be very less, and it will not require your attention. But suppose that you have not analyzed or you have not understood how strong the wall is, then you're likely to be distracted in between the tasks, and that's going to create trouble for you. But this is just one example. Okay. Now, the other thing is, if the task is too complicated or too long, what you can do is that break it down into units that you will be able to work with. So if a task involves multiple steps, if I give you an example from what we do when we say write articles or papers, we generally divide it into a number of sections. So you have an introduction, then you have how we actually do the experiment, and how we write the results. So we try to divide them into sections, and we try to write one section at a time. And within that section, we divide it into smaller subsections, such that we can do one unit at a time without it overwhelming us. It could be similar to learning a language. Perhaps you can divide it. This is actually the idea when you learn anything. It's divided into lessons, and the lesson is divided into sections. The section is divided into subsection. We have perhaps not thought about it, but the idea is that you're able to address one thing at a time. And in the earlier times, in the classical way that things were studied was, you would master one thing and then go over to the next. You wouldn't try to just cram up whatever you can. You master one subsection and go to the next subsection. When you've mastered that section, then go to the next lesson, and so on and so forth until you've mastered the entire book or the entire discipline. So try to break that task. How you do it, again, will depend upon your task and your taste. Then do not try to finish the task in one go. Most of us do this. Again, this is because of another problem that we have. We are hasty in many of the things, and we do not want to indulge in one thing for a long time because we tend to get bored of it. But the idea is that if you try to finish the task in one go, it will not be very good, because anything requires revisions and corrections, and so there's no perfect finish to a task. You need to hold on to the task, let's give it more time, and hopefully you will be able to avoid the distraction. So do it in spaces, do some of it now, do some of it later, do it at your comfort, but this is how you can avoid distraction. The other idea is to develop some routine procedures for dealing with your attentional residue. Now, what do I mean by routine procedure? One of the things is that whenever you're starting a task, for example, whenever you're sitting, so remind yourself that you're sitting for studying to achieve a purpose. So you're trying to achieve, perhaps you're trying to appear for a competitive exam, and you're studying to get through that competitive exam. So renew your attention that I'm studying because I need to achieve this. Or for example, if you're doing something of your job, so remind yourself that you're doing this job. It is important to you because you need to earn, you need to take home for your family, and everything you need to provide for your family. So renewing these intentions, renewing your purpose will help you deal with attention residue. How it helps you deal with your attention residue is because now you will be focusing, when you're focusing on the intention, for a moment the attentional space will be crowded with this intention, and therefore this particular thought, this particular intention now starts pushing you towards this task, because it forces you to look at the task that is important for you and to forget about the task that wasn't important for you. This is how it is helpful. And then when you are into something which has such high intentions, you're unlikely to indulge in something that is going to take you away from it. Okay. Then the simplest of all the steps is facilitate yourself using your context. What this means is, if you're studying, try to fix a place for studying. Always do that. If you sit on the same place and study, or if you want to sit down for work, if you sit in the same place for work, you will see that down the line, a few weeks, a few months later, that you have a lot of concentration just by sitting in that particular place, and the task becomes easier. for example, in our Indian households, we do have houses where there's a specific spot where a mandir is maintained, or where you start praying, or a musalla is maintained. So the idea behind those things is that if you do it in the same spot, your mind is trained into focusing on those tasks itself. It would be a good idea to make your students in the classroom sit in the same places every day. Why? Because that will get them into the habit, their mind into focusing on the task ahead. It is just the routine kind of thing that we like. If you're sitting somewhere else, if you change your places, then your mind needs some time to adjust to these novelties. So you have moved from one place to another, you need some time, some sort of, it is very little, but it creates attention residue. So if you can, try to fix places for most of the things. Then the attention capacity's limitedness. How do you get yourself away from distractions? One is monitor your distractions. This is difficult, I agree, but this is probably the most rewarding. It's as simple as that. When you're doing a task, ask yourself, where is my attention right now? Am I focusing on the task? Am I thinking about something else? And note down this. And also, if possible, note down if you're having some other feeling. So for example, I start checking my social media account, and I realize that I'm checking my social media account. So I immediately, my attention is broken. Why is it broken? What is my feeling? I was bored of doing what I was doing. So write down boredom and that boredom, and make an arrow that it leads to checking social media. And like this, over a period of weeks or a few months, you will have a list of your particular distractions and the feelings underlying them. And this is going to help you deal with them more easily. How, that we'll discuss in the internal discomfort section. Then analyzing distractions. This is again also a bit difficult. You need to distinguish between helpful distractions and what are disruptive distractions. Not all distractions are bad. So if I've been studying for a long time and I start feeling hungry, that distraction just might be good for me to disengage for a little time, and then perhaps go and take something, a drink, or say have some snacks, and then come back to my task. But you have the defining difference is this distraction indicating that I am tired or that I'm hungry, or is it that I am not fully engaging with my task? So if the distraction is a result of my not being fully engaged with the task, then it is disruptive. Otherwise, it is helpful. So you need to indulge in helpful distractions and get rid of disruptive distractions. Finally, use your helpful distractions to your advantage. If you're feeling tired, perhaps you don't want to leave the task, get up, make a few stretches, or just take a few steps, walk. Do not indulge in something that is going to take you further away from your task. And what that is, we'll come back to. We'll discuss that in the next slides. The second issue was the novelty bias, seeking new things. So this is, again, as I said, it is an inherent tendency. We can do very little about it. It cannot be eliminated. What this does is it seeks us more distracted. It makes us more distracted by making anything that we have been doing monotonous. So we tend to get bored very easily, and new things seems exciting. Most of us, why are we so hooked to social media? Whenever we see that red bubble on WhatsApp or our mail, why are we so hooked to it? Because all the while it is providing you new information. It might be redundant, it might be the same kind of information, but it does have some new aspect to it. No two informations would be almost the same, unless the message is repeated, of course. This, because it hacks this problem of novelty seeking. So what is the solution? It's difficult, but what you try to do is bring novelty in the task that you are supposed to do. So whatever you're doing, try to make it more creative, try to make it novel, or make it fun, make it exciting. And if the task is exciting, then you will be able to sustain your focus for a longer time. So how do you do this? From the traction side, what you can do is reimagine your task, and this is based on experience of what others have done. I'm just conveying it to you. So convert your task or subtask into a game or a psychodrama. So for example, you could say perhaps your walking or your exercise could be, you could just make it a game where you're avoiding imaginary enemies, and you're playing around just as kids do. They play this Chor Police and all those games. So just imagine that you're doing something. You don't have to tell that to anyone. But this, what it does is it will give you additional things to focus on the task that you're doing, and will likely to keep you there. You could also, the task, of course, does not need to be very structured or organized. So you could be doing one thing at a time, and then you could just move on to something else. You can also try making small changes, tweaks to your current problem. So for example, you could, if you're sitting working on a computer, you could change the background. You could perhaps try out a new screen, the background appearances, or just change the location of the icons so that you have something new to seek out. This might hopefully will be able to help you. You can also change your approach to the problem, which is that whenever you're trying to address any problem, see the kind of constraints that you have. So what we do is, most of us, we have a habit of, if we get a problem, we just have this habit of, let's do it, without actually giving it too much thought. So that's kind of the tendency. It's becoming a tendency in the corporate world and otherwise also, that "Aro chalo kuch to karte hain, let's do something." But if you were just to hold yourself back for some time, think about the task that you're doing, you'll see that it has certain constraints. If you think about the constraints, you will not have to indulge in trial and error, and your task will become much more fun-filled. So if you are, say designing, say making a drawing, so that the drawing, what you have is, you have your pencils, you have certain amount of colors, and that you need to make certain figures in certain shapes in a certain space. If you were to just think about all these constraints that you have, you will be much more interested. You will be able to sustain your focus for a much longer time than if you were to just go about trial and error. Arey chalo yaar kuch karte hain, karke to dekhte hain kaisa hota hai. So that approach, even though it is popularized a lot, it's really not very beneficial, as we have seen in the literature. Of course, it's not there in the popular literature, but studies don't support that sort of thing. Then we have how to get rid of distractions. So you can use your micro distractions. I was just mentioning about doing a few stretches. That fits more in this category, but also there. Suppose you are bored of studying, reading, of what you have been doing. So just look out of your window. See or look at a flower, keep a flower vase on your table, or have a rose or something on your table. Just smell it for some time. Just look at it. But please do not look at the phone. Don't look at your phone. Why? Because the phone will give you some information that is again likely to take up your attentional space. An attentional residue will again form in your attentional space. You can even change your position. So if you were sitting, you can now stand for some time. If you were standing for reading, perhaps you can just lie back for some time. And changing all these the adjustments will make something, will just make an additional challenge, and will make things seek new. You can do stretches. I've already said that. Sip some drink. This is also, some people have found it very interesting, that you take a coffee or tea or something, whatever, green tea, whatever you like, or a juice, and whenever you're drinking it, whenever you're taking a sip, you think about its taste, that how nice it's tasting, or what is the kind of taste that it has. This is going to give you a refreshing feeling. And then sometimes you can also just pray, thank God that you've been able to focus for at least half an hour. Suppose you were able to focus on 10 minutes, you just thank God, and that again gives you a novel break. Now do remember that these activities that you do, the thoughts should not take you away from your current task. So what do I mean by this? Now, suppose you start looking out of the window. Please do not start focusing on, say, an argument that you had last night, or an upcoming new series on Netflix or something, because that is going to take up more of your attentional space, and then perhaps take you totally away from the task that you're doing currently. So when you look out of the window, that should also be very focused, very controlled. You have to balance yourself. Sometimes it happens in our office that when we are working for too long, when we are focusing and perhaps we are doing nice work, we tend to think about things like, oh, I'm being underpaid, and see how much they are getting and I'm not getting, all those things. Now, again, it might be true, might be false. However, it is not good to think about it at the moment. At the moment, it is more apt that you just focus on your task and not on anything else. All right. So in other words, do not self-ruminate. Do not look at things that are going to take you away from what you have been doing. Next, we come to third, which is lack of motivation. And here really we do not have a lot of solutions. The problem is simple. You're not motivated enough. You feel purposeless. But the more purposeless that you feel in doing a task, the more likely you will be distracted from it, because there's nothing to hold you to it. Mostly when we have exhausted all other sorts of distraction blockers or concentration holders, it is the motivation that keeps you going, that I'm motivated, I need this task for a purpose. But if that is not there, then generally nothing else will work. So again, for this, go back, define your life goals, see what you need to do, make your task align to your life goals, and that is what you're going to do, and make time for traction. What I mean by making time for traction, for social media, for example, it need not be a distraction. For example, if you want to chat with your family members or chat with your friends for some time, make time for it. So perhaps half an hour a day, I am going to just give it to social media. When you're doing that, even if you're just scrolling down Facebook or just watching WhatsApp or watching YouTube, it is not distraction. It could be 1 hour, no problem, but you take time for it, so that you commit yourself that, okay, this is the time that I'm going to spend for social media. At that time, it is not going to be distraction, as long as it doesn't extend to other things. Similarly, you can make time for meeting all your goals in life. Family, so I want to spend some time with my family. I know that I have to spend, say, a certain amount of time with my daughter, for example, say half an hour a day. So fix up that time, and at that time you must fully be concentrating. You must fully give it to your daughter. Then you must not check any important mail, any important WhatsApp at that time. That time is fixed for her. Similarly, it could be for your wife, it could be for your parents, it could be for your spirituality, and so on and so forth. Whatever it is, whatever goals that you want to focus on, make time for everything. It need not be daily, it could be weekly, but do make sure that you're making time for everything, because that time that you make, it is making you move towards the goal that you want in life, and hence making you better, like more happy and better, of better mental health. Finally, we deal with the internal discomfort. Now, this is very important and it might take a little time. For those of you who are, say, beyond your 30s, there was an old movie, Amitabh Bachchan's Sharabi, where it had an interesting line in one of the songs, which said, "Nasha sharab mein hota to nachti botal." Now, you can reject it outright, but it has a very important metaphor that we can implement in our life. What it is saying is that the intoxication is not in the drink, the alcohol itself, because had that been the case, then the bottle should also have been affected. It should have danced. It doesn't. Which means that there is something about the person or about you which makes you more likely to be victim to distraction. You can blame your smartphones, you can blame YouTube, you can blame Netflix, laptops, your busy lifestyle. But the thing is that distraction is something that is coming because of something inside you that is making you more and more, more of a victim towards this. And this is, and this kind of this vulnerability inside us is of two kinds. One is what is emotional discomfort, and the other is dissatisfaction. Emotional discomfort has many causes and is in many varieties, but I'll just give you a few examples. For example, if you have anxiety or feeling bored or feeling insecure, all these things give you an emotional discomfort. Anxiety is, for example, you're not able to achieve what you want, you have not prepared for the exam, you're not able to do the task properly, anything. It could be for n number of reasons. Similarly, you get bored very easily. All these things will take you away from what you have been doing. Dissatisfaction comes from four, but for the sake of this lecture, I'll restrict it to three. It comes from three things that again are very natural to us. We can't help them. One is boredom, other is negativity bias, and the third is rumination. What is boredom? Boredom means that we just cannot hold on to a task for very long. That we are not designed that way. Studies have shown that people prefer to take electric shock rather than getting bored. So they were like, there was an experiment where people were told that if you can sit in a room, or if you can stay in a room alone without talking to anyone, without having your phone and all, for say 4 days or something, then you'll get certain, say $200 or something. Or if you want to get out, you could take a shock and get out immediately. So people took they stayed there for some time, a few hours or something, but then they agreed to take the shock rather than getting bored. So that is how painful boredom is for us. Similarly, negative bias. Now this is our tendency to focus on negative things, and the priority becomes, whenever we recall any negative thing, the priority is to get rid of it rather than focusing on the task. Now this is very important. For example, you were reading an article, or you were, say, doing something, you were in your work, and your phone beeps. There is a WhatsApp message in your group which shows you a very uncomfortable news, something that you do not like. Some people have been killed. It's tragedy, okay, but you see those video clips and now you're emotionally overwhelmed. Why? Because it's a negative thing. It has created a negative feeling from you and you want to get rid of it. So to get rid of it, what you're going to do is you're going to start sharing this, or you're going to do something else, or you're going to start posting, and you're going to indulge in some behavior to get rid of this negative feeling, because we cannot hold it for too long, rather than focusing on the task. Now that is there, but honestly speak, what could you have done about it? How many of us can honestly tell that is actually going to make a difference? So this tendency to share the news immediately arises because we are unable to deal with the negative feelings inside us. We are not able to identify them, and what they force us to do is they push us away from what we were doing, and you get lost. Similar thing happens if you're watching a YouTube video. You watch one, and then another suggestion comes, so you watch that, and then you just forget about what you were doing at all. It could be a news, it could be a post, or anything. So my advice is that avoid it. Of course, you are the best judge of what you do. Then we have this tendency of ruminating, which is the tendency to think about past events. And now, this is again important. This can even happen when you're focusing on a task. So when you're focusing on a task, but you're not able to solve the problems, what you start doing you start blaming yourself. So for example, if you're not able to do a maths problem right now, it will remind you that, okay, in the past, you have not been able to solve a social science or a science question. And then a self-criticism starts, which again creates negative feelings. And, you start telling yourself that I am good for nothing, and I've always been a failure, I cannot do this. And then you start quitting things away. So the solution is that you deal with these internal discomforts. How? I'll tell you those steps, and you do not fight with these discomforts. I think I'm already going to go beyond time, but I seek your apologies. It'll just take me a few more minutes, and I request
we are not distracted yet, sir. Go on.
Thank you. Okay, so the final thing is, how do you deal with our internal discomforts? So from the traction side, most of us have heard about this concept of inertia. Newton's law is very, very famous. What we have found is that it's very, very difficult to get through the first 5 or 10 minutes of a task. And our probability of getting distracted is in those initial 5 minutes, or in those initial 5 or 10 minutes. So what you need to do is force yourself one way or the other to just get into that task, and do not quit the task at that time. Whatever it is, just force yourself. So I think anyone can manage that. To focus on something for 5 minutes. whether it is reading, whether it is listening to something, whether it is, even teaching, taking a class. Sometimes we are distracted even doing that. So focus yourself that, okay, at least for these 5 minutes, I'm not going to do anything else. The benefit here is, if you have been able to focus for 5 minutes, and okay, so let me assume that after these 5 minutes, you quit the task. You're not able to do anything. You were not able to sustain beyond 5 minutes. But at least that you have been able to do that task for 5 minutes. So either you have been able to achieve 5 minutes of that task, or now you will be more involved in it. There will be no third option in this, right? So just force yourself. For someone who's using like computer or who's writing or reading something, it could just be staring blankly at the screen. But do not watch social media, do not watch YouTube, do not watch news even at this time, please. That is going to take you away nearly forever. I mean, forever, but I mean, you'll not be able to come back to the task. So avoid watching social media. Now, some of us have the tendency of fooling our own selves, that we start Googling for things and we think that we are actually researching. But what we are doing is nothing. We are just distracted. We are not able to deal with this internal complexity that we are facing right now, the difficulty which is leading to boredom. We are being pushed into watching the social media. We have to avoid that. Just push yourself. Then use, the other thing is using self-rewards. Now, what is self-rewards? Suppose that you catch yourself being distracted. So you were focused on a task and you suddenly realize that you are not focusing on it. Now you can do two things when you catch yourself. You punish yourself by criticizing that you're useless, you will never be able to focus, and this and that, and I'm not worth it, and I need to do something else. Or you can tell yourself that, oh, great, thank God, I've been able to catch myself being distracted. Now I can get back to my task. Human tendency it is that when we are rewarded for something, the behavior is more likely to increase. It's very simple. If you have a child, you want him to do some behavior and again. So whenever he does that behavior, so for example, if you want him to greet others, when he greets others, you perhaps give him a smile or give him a chocolate. He's more likely to greet others next time, right? If you punish him rather, he'll escape. He'll try to avoid it. Similarly, if you criticize yourself, internally your mind will now avoid catching distractions. It's going to make a huge difference. So your mind will say, "Arey, to yaar distraction catch karna hi nahi hai, otherwise it will lead to self-criticism." So rather, what you do is reward yourself for catching distraction. Congratulate yourself. Okay. Now, finally, distractions, and this is something that I've tried, and it has been tried on others, and I have an experience of a number of people. This is going to work. You can definitely try it on. It's very simple. Whenever you have an uncomfortable thought or feeling coming to your mind, whether it is during your task or anytime, do not fight with it. So do not talk to it. So if you have a task that like someone talked bad to you, someone talked rudely to you, do not try to justify it. Do not try to talk back to it. Do not try to fight it. Do not try to take it out of your mind. Just see it as it is. And tell yourself that, oh, this is something external. It is not my thought. It has just come into my thought without my permission. That is it. If you just see it externally, it's going to dissipate. It's going to go away. This might seem very complicated, but trust me, try it. It's very, very simple. Just see the thought as external. Even when you're praying, when you're praying, we have lots of distractions, right? So whenever a thought comes to it, do not fight it out. Just realize that, okay, it's something external. It's not something that I'm doing. And your life is set in this. Okay. Another thing that you can do is you can try out taking conscious breaths. So you can focus on your breaths, and when you focus on your breaths, your focus will move away from those thoughts. And simple, you will be able to address this. Fine. So that is all that I had to say about distraction. This is a big topic. It requires perhaps more sessions, and it will require more time, but I wish you all the best to try out all this, and hopefully they will be helpful to you. I have a few recommendations if you want to read these 3 books, something that you can try out. They're simple and have very, very interesting steps that you can try out in your life. especially with respect to being more focused about your task and about your life goals. This particular talk was based on this article, How to Increase Your Attention Span by Marco Bosco. Read that so you get more insights and perhaps a better perspective on what I was talking about today. So with that, I would thank you all for your patience and your attention, and that is all.
Wow, what a wonderful session. Breathe less, talk. Samir bhai, I feel like you are not exhausted, although
No,
it
Salah
was.
bhai is very kind in his praises, so please, take no notice of it. I'll be distracted at this time when he talks about it.
Yeah, but my dear, it's very we are very fortunate that we received sort of informations. We always, in this uh, era where the COVID is happening everywhere, and the people are saying watch this, watch that, so many blah blah messages, and that, so sort of destruction leads the person's life away. These are the things that we need to control anyhow.
Exactly.
And most importantly, we are sitting at home doing every time on screen, and he has given a lot of insight about what is required and what is not required as such. So a lot of problems, and when you have to encounter those problems, you have to connect or disconnect with them and find out the solution from yourself. So sometimes you are self-capable of resolving the things. Sometimes you require external forces even. So by this, I'll be just taking 5 more minutes to take questions, and then we'll wind up this call. And I would request afterwards to Dr. Isaf, to Dr. Firdaus Isaf, if she's here, to give a vote of thanks. First, we'll take certain questions. If you have any question, you can raise your hands. I'll see the questions, if any, or you can put in the chat box, because I've already. It's is any UG course psychology is available in IIT? He's asking question, Ejaz Huda.
At the moment, there is no UG course in psychology, but you can try for an integrated cognitive science course. So you have a BTech, BSc, MSc integrated course. It's 5 years. It's in cognitive science, so it's not in psychology.
Okay, great. So any other questions? I am not seeing any more questions here. If you have any question, very deep clearance of traction and distraction. Thank you, Dr. Samir sir, from Dr. Zareen Athar. So you know what, this is what the requirement is, because we are hungry people. We wanted to take some more thing from you, and we will be praying for your sessions from long time. From the last 1.5 months I was praying that you can give me the time for that. And finally I received it, and today, believe me, it's really a wonderful talk. And by this, if there are no questions, Chandni Chum, as basically I do not know the name. You can ask question because your name is written Chandni Chum here. You have, I think your name is written somewhere. So you can ask your question, please.
Hello, sir.
Please. Yes.
So my question is, in IIT, it's great to be speaking to you. You're a faculty from IIT, and you have worked really hard in life to reach that level, and which is very unusual. It's not common with everyone. So my question here is, for a mechanical graduate, can he get into IIT, into any mechatronics or software on a master's level, evading GATE, without GATE?
So I didn't get the last part. I'm sorry. If you are a mechanical graduate.
From mechanical graduate, is it possible to get into masters in IIT for pursuing computer science and finally evolving into AI at PhD level? So is it possible without GATE?
To my knowledge, at the moment, they do not have an option without GATE, because for any master's program, you could change your branches, but you would need GATE score in that particular branch. I mean, even for other science and humanities courses, now you need GATE score, even for them. So I don't think that this would be a viable option.
Okay. The class was fantastic, Doctor. Allah bless you for this.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And Sir, suddenly some stories. So just reading out the messages, there are so many messages and they are very praising messages for you. Very informative session. Looking forward for the same in Hindi language. Oh, he is Hindi speaker, but his session was completely in English. So suddenly some story comes in my mind, which are totally based on imagination. And when I start taking to myself about that, why it happens and what should I do?
Right. So this is a very common problem, and I think this is what it actually does is it creates a sort of emotion which you are not aware of, and that emotion can push you. It can even push you into being very happy about it. So we have all heard about the story of Sheikh Chilli, the daydreamer, and all those things. So you could whenever you're imagining something, when you start talking to it, when you start seeing how good it is, and whatever about that thought you do, it'll take you into one of these emotional states, positive or negative, and that is now going to take you into that. So if it is a negative thought, you have discomfort, you want to remove that discomfort. If you are positive, you want to keep enjoying that feeling. Any case, it has taken you away from the task. So the only thing is, whenever and it will take some practice. It is not going to happen just once, once or twice. It will take weeks of practice. Once you are able to do that, then you'll be able to handle this problem very well. You just need to see that any thought is external to yourself. Don't talk about it.
And Mohsin Deka, he's raising hand, so you can ask your question, Mohsin. Mr. Mohsin, if you can ask your question. Are you hearing us?
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
Sir, my question is that while doing a particular activity, for example, we are studying, we are performing salah, and most importantly, when I'm sleeping or doing some particular activity, playing or eating, in my mind, I get some overthinking, a negative feeling, a very deep overthinking. How can we eradicate it, and how can I be motivated throughout the day while studying or doing any particular activity?
Yeah, see, studying is something that I've already addressed. If you're talking about salah, then that is very nice. I would say start with your wuzu, focusing on each step that you're doing, and from there start getting rid of other thoughts. Don't fight them out, don't push them out. Slowly just see that, okay, these are some external thoughts. You don't have to fight them. Once you're wuzu, and then when you stand for prayer, when you're doing a niyat, you're renewing your intentions and all these things, what they're doing is they're clearing your attention residue on the one hand, and they're also giving you some practice at removing these distractions. And when you stand for prayer, then try to develop meta-awareness. So it would be a good idea if you can know the translations and you be aware of the steps that you're doing. This will all help you in, of course, tackling the prayer. It's not an easy thing to do. It's a lifelong struggle, but it can be achieved. So start focusing from your wuzu. Make your wuzu proper, and accordingly, all things will be, it will fall in place.
Thank you. So, sir, another question. How can I, sir, another question is, sir, some important productive pointers, sir, that will eradicate and that will reduce the anxiety, which leads to overthinking. Some productive pointers.
Deal with your discomforts. You have to identify. So as I said in the beginning, most psychotherapies are just based on this principle that you are being told how your mind works. So your mind works this way, that if you find emotional discomfort, it is going to lead you to this whatever distraction or anxiety. Deal with those discomforts, you will be in good place. So have your life goals aligned, have your activities aligned to your life goals. Inshallah, things will be fine, will fall in place.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
The last question. Any more topic in the next session? So we'll inform you later on. And the last question from Tabish Siddiqui. Tabish Siddiqui, you can ask your question, please. Mr. Tabish Siddiqui, if you are here, you can ask your question. Probably it would be the last question of this eve. I feel like Tabish is not listening us. And the last question is written over here by Bilal Vani. Sir, I left my job a couple of days ago because of a minor scuffle, and now myself is feeling heavy when I get the flashback of my activities at the former workplace. I am in a profound discomfort right even after being with this enlightening session. So what is your
Okay, so
suggestion?
Raju, so I'm sad to hear that. But the thing is, this session, of course, wasn't meant to address the problem that you're having. For you, like the advice that I can give you objectively is that you have actually moved away from your life goal. So your life goal is that you need to have a job, a regular source of income. Not having a job has actually taken you too far away from that. So what you need to do is you need to address this issue from the perspective of this session. That will probably address your problem.
So by this, I feel like we have to wind up this call, and because it's already 5 and we have already taken a lot of time. So I would request Dr. Firdaus, if you are here, so to have the vote of thanks, or Fazal Bhai, if you can. Fazal is
Assalamualaikum.
something.
Thank you, sir. Assalamualaikum, everyone. Mashallah, very informative session. In literature and in life, we ultimately pursue not conclusion but beginning. So, first of all, I would like to thank our today's speaker, Ahmed sir, for giving a precious time from his busy schedule. So, thank you very much, sir.
It's my pleasure.
I would like to thank organizer XYST4, SAIPA, MP Educational Conclave, and of course all the participants. Thank you so much. And with this, I conclude. Thank you. Thank you all.